Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm Marvin Lamb, and I am one of the directors of the New Music Ensemble, the other being my colleague, Dr. Jonathan Shames. And we want to welcome you tonight to this celebration of the music of Lou Harrison. And I hope that at some point you will Google Lou Harrison or look him up on Wikipedia or something. He's a fascinating man. And if he were alive today, he was born in 1917. If he were alive today, he would be 100 years old. So this is his birthday party. So hence the program, Happy Birthday, Lou. He was a very interesting man in terms of the social fabric of the United States of America in the early 1950s and 60s, certainly in the musical fabric. Among other things, he was an architect. He was an avant-garde home builder. He designed percussion instruments. He was all about inclusion. And one of the things that struck him about his inclusivity was the incorporation of other cultures into the cultures of the United States. So he was one of the, not the first composer, but he was one of the leading lights of music composition that integrated the music of what we would call now the Pacific Rim into the fabric of the United States of America. And one of the things that he was particularly fascinated about was the music of Bali and the music of the Micronesia and the Balinese gamelan. And he studied that and was quite a scholar in that and is very strongly responsible for bringing that level of consciousness, both as a performer and as a composer and as a scholar, into the world in which we inhabit today. So this concert tonight is all about inclusion, and one of the things that we are inclusive about is a particular thing that is related not only to Lou Harrison, but to his colleague, John Cage. Lou Harrison was a percussionist, and a very fine percussionist. And as you can see, he was about all things percussion. And he used traditional instruments in traditional ways, and he used traditional instruments in very non-traditional ways. And he also used non-traditional instruments, what are now in the parlance of orchestration and composition technique called found sound instruments. When he was doing this work, they were called junkyard instruments. And he literally went to junkyards and to yard sales and to hardware stores with mallets, and he would just bang on things until he found things that sounded cool, and he would buy them. And sometimes he spent a lot of money on them, and sometimes he spent a nickel on them or 22 cents on them or whatever was going in the yard sale, and then he would take them home and incorporate them into the literature that he was writing. And so two of the pieces that you're going to hear tonight are wonderful pieces. One is called Varied Trio, and it's for violin, piano, and percussion, and has some found sound instruments in it. And the other is the Concerto for Violin and Percussion Orchestra, which has a lot of found sound instruments in it. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to just sort of take a little tour of all of our hardware up here to kind of tell you what the found sound instruments are about and talk us through that. So let's start here. This found sound instrument is just a bunch of glassware. And since we're playing all American composers tonight, it seems appropriate that we have a jelly glass from the bicentennial with an American flag on it. And we have a beer stein and a wine glass and, a very old vase that somebody got flowers in once upon a time, perhaps at the hospital. And you've all seen one of these at your grandma's on Thanksgiving Day, a jelly dish. So all of these sounds are incorporated and put into the Varied Trio in one particular movement. So that's that. So let's walk on around here. So cool stuff here. One thing is a set of hung glass sounds, think little tinkling sounds, right? And we have here some little pipes that you would find in a children's rhythm band from like the 5th or 6th grade. And these very rare-looking percussion instruments that you think, my goodness, those must be very expensive instruments, but you know what? They look exactly kind of like flower pots. Well, you're partially right. They're not expensive instruments, and they are flower pots, just turned upside down. And they're of various sizes and various enamel and clay configurations that they each make a different sound. So another junkyard instrument. So that's that stuff. Everything else here is stuff you'd see in a normal percussion ensemble or a band or an orchestra. So let's wander around here. You can't see them, but I would invite you to come up on stage when the show's over to look at them. We have these kind of cool sounds. And you'd say, well, they look exactly like brake drums, and that's exactly what they are. They're the outer casing of a brake drum off a small car, a truck, and a large automobile. They've been cleaned up. We washed them for this gig tonight, but that's basically what they are, another found sound instrument. Moving on around here, we have some upside down paint cans. We have a couple of 4 cans that would probably hold paint, played thusly. All right, found sounds. Here we have kind of an interesting sound. And that sound, this is actually a percussion instrument, but it's called an iron coil. And it would typically be, in Lou Harrison's time, a spring that would come off a shock absorber of a tractor or a truck or something like that, and cut into a small piece and hung. And that's another kind of found sound that he used. Fascinating found sounds up here. We have a couple of cookie tins that you get at your local Walgreens or Walmart that have been bashed into different shapes so that they make different kinds of interesting sounds. We've got a couple of catchers out of a stove. We've got an iron pot. We have somebody's skillet that they washed, but skillet you cook bacon in, or a grilled cheese sandwich or whatever, or perhaps something healthier, I don't know. And then other kinds of cans that are over here that would hold food, maybe cans that would hold creamy mushroom soup or green beans for your annual Thanksgiving casserole. We have those, and we have other traditional instruments. And then over here, interestingly, we should have a double bass laid on its side and played with sticks. We couldn't find anybody in the orchestral realm that would loan us their $12,000 double bass so that we could bang on it with sticks. I don't know what it is with those people. They just get a little fussy about their instruments, I suppose. But instead of using the double bass on its side played with sticks, which is what Lou Harrison did, we're using something that are called slit drums or African log drums, and they make that kind of sound. So those are the found sounds as we kind of come around this way. And then we have, and those are the sounds that are in the concerto for percussion and orchestra, and in the trio for violin, piano, and percussion. And then we have a setup over here of traditional instruments that are played in kind of non-traditional ways. A piece by a Pacific Rim composer, an Asian American composer, Paul Kihara, who has also made his career as a film composer. And it's a wonderful piece entitled Ceremony 2 Incantations for flute, 2 cellos, and percussion. I'm going to wander around here and try not to fall off the stage, walk past this really nice gong, and we get to the piano. Well, we all know what a piano is, but what our good friend Mr. Harrison discovered, and I'm going to put the mic down here, hang on a second. What he discovered is you can play a piano on a keyboard. That's the last part of tonality you're going to hear tonight, so I just thought I'd let you know that. But there's all kinds of things that Lou discovered that you could do with a piano. A piano is a kind of a percussion instrument, so he treated it like a percussion instrument. So he found like there are these braces that hold the soundboard together. They're like metal struts that keep the piano from flying apart. And he found that if you depress the pedal and you hit one of these struts on the side. Makes a pretty cool sound, huh? So that's one sound. That's another found sound on this piano. He also found out that you could hit the casing in various places if you held the pedal down. You can make 4 or 5 different sounds on the casing of the piano and the inside of the piano, and that you could also play the inside of the piano with your hands. You can pluck sounds. You can create sound. Whoops. Don't want to run the piano into the vibraphone here. You can take your fist, create sounds like that. You can strum it like a guitar, and you can pluck it like a violin, and so forth and so on. So all of these sounds are incorporated in a wonderful way into the very trio, and that's the way in which the trio of violin, percussion, and piano is varied, among others. So that brings us back to our All-American Jelly class, and that'll kind of give you a tour of all the stuff, excuse me, that Lou Harrison had in mind when he used this inclusivity and these found instruments to kind of recreate a Javanese, Balinese gamelan, or a Javanese gamelan. And so he and his compatriot, John Cage, kind of came up with a profound idea in terms of orchestration, which is something that I teach here. And it was this: it isn't what you use that makes something musical. Anything is inherently musical if you use it in a musical way. So it's not what is being used that's fascinating tonight. It's the way in which it's being used that makes it, indeed, I think, musical, and I hope you do as well. So that kind of completes our almost inclusive story. We have Paul Kihara, the Asian American composer, writing the incantations in a sort of freely rhapsodic manner. And to round out the program, we're going to go the opposite direction from the East Coast, or to the East Coast, and we're going to go to Europe. And we're going to do a piece by our colleague and my compatriot at Oklahoma State University, a gentleman named Igor Karacha. And Igor wrote a piece called The Night Has a Thousand Eyes. And it's for soprano saxophone, piano, and the soprano saxophone plays a good deal of its musical material into the piano, and the piano acts as a resonating agent for the saxophone. Nice. And it's also for accordion. It's one of the few pieces I've ever heard written for the accordion other than your standard polka. Okay? So very different kind of sounding. And it also quotes the very famous popular song of post-World War II in France, a piece that you'll instantly recognize called La Vie en Rose. And it was a piece that the chanteuse Edith Piaf made her signature song and her signature statement after World War II. And so it has that sort of haunting, lovely Edith Piaf-like sort of old world quality about it. So that's sort of our tour. And now it's time for us to reboot the tour and put all this stuff to good use. So thank you very much for being here. I hope you enjoy the show, and I hope that you will come up and look at some of this fascinating stuff when the show's over. Thanks again.